I'm not just a Democrat. And I want to start with that, right? Because I sit here as a member of Congress, a millennial, one of the younger members of Congress, of the generation that came here with the largest burden of student loan debt in history. I would probably, if I had to guess, there probably isn't a member of Congress who was more appropriately able to talk about student loan debt than me here. And yet you're talking, and oftentimes these bills are talking over people like me. The reality is that so much that's in this entire reconciliation bill targets me specifically, not me, the congressperson, me, the first generation black student who came from a working class, single black mother who could not afford otherwise to send her child to school. She had a child who had aspirations, not to be a congressperson at the time, but aspirations to get a higher education, to be able to break cycles of inequality that we had been thrust into in communities just like mine. But for Pell Grants, but for the ability to take on loans, and I will be the first to admit, I would not have liked to have taken on loans. Right? We would love to see college education more affordable, more accessible. We look at a country that is the wealthiest nation on earth, yet makes the lowest amount of investments into public education for its citizenry. Other nations on earth have been able to figure this out, where we have not just free college education, free education from pre-K to college and other first world, as we call them, developed nations. We also have healthcare. What we're seeing here in this bill and in so many others of our practices are a lack of any sort of investment into working class people, which means a lack of investment into the future of Americans. When we think about who shoulders the biggest burden in loan debt, it is black women. Black women shoulder the largest burdens into student loan debt. But if you asked us if we would still like to be doctors or engineers or lawyers or professionals, you would hear us say resoundingly yes. If we would still like the opportunity to learn for the sake of being able to learn, for knowledge's sake, which is an important and a completely reasonable reason to want to go to college, you would hear us say yes still. None of the provisions in this bill have any incentives for colleges to lower the cost of admissions. What we are doing instead is incentivizing colleges to take fewer low-income students. With these provisions in place throughout this bill, I would not be here. I would not be a congressperson. I would not have been a state rep before that. I would not be a black woman from a first-generation college student from a low-income community in the Mon Valley who went to law school or who went to Penn State and graduated. None of that would have been a reality to me. Nothing in this bill, nothing that you all are suggesting would have created more opportunities for me. So even when we say that only 20% of people would be impacted, I would be of that 20%. How many of your colleagues would be of that 20%? How many of your doctors or your nurses or your teachers would be in that 20%? I would argue that it is more than you would think. We deserve to be in career fields that we have passions and or talents for. But the reality is that we will not have those opportunities if we move forward with this piece of legislation. We will not have these opportunities. Black students, brown students, first-generation college students, first-generation Americans will not have access to college. We cannot simply say that we will take away the opportunities for students to access loans, not replace it with anything else, not replace it with lower college education, not replace it with lower interest rates, not make the system better, and still say that you will somehow figure it out. We know the outcome here. Black students, brown students, poor students will not be left to figure it out. Instead, elite students, students who come from the 1% will continue to be able to access education. They will continue to have access to career fields that we mentioned here. And the gap, the achievement gap, the racial gap will just continue to increase because these are not being addressed here. I yield back.